Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking All Sports. As per usual, every week I am your host Zach, and on today's episode we've got a little bit to talk about, including the Ashes especially, as well as some more AFL stuff to talk about, as a lot of international sport are taking a break. But let's not waste any time, let's get straight into it. Kick off the week in review, and the only thing we're going to be talking about mainly for the week in review is the Ashes that happened over the weekend. Australia have gone up 2-0 now in the series and are one win away from retaining the Ashes again. Fantastic result for the Aussies. They looked like they were in trouble when Ben Stokes was hitting them left, right and centre for six. Putting the Aussie attack under a lot of pressure with the Bazball strategy, but they stayed composed. They got the crucial wicket thanks to a good catch from Alex Carey, and they were able to steady themselves into another victory over there at Lords. Bairstow controversy is probably the biggest thing to come out of the second test. Was he meant to be out? In my opinion, the rules are rules. Bairstow decided to creep up. Whether he knew the over was over or not, it actually wasn't over. So, and in fairness to the Aussies, Bairstow's been doing that all series as well. He was doing it to Labuschagne on day 3, where he was just throwing the ball at the stumps, thinking Labuschagne was going to be out of his crease and Bairstow was going to catch him out. So, in my books, it is fair play. Rules are rules. And there was no rule breaking at all there. I understand there's a lot of arguments with the spirit of cricket, but a lot of those arguments should be shut down when you've got someone like Stuart Broad who refused to walk years ago in the Ashes as well. So, in my opinion, my take on it is he was definitely out. You could probably say there's a bit of bias there because I'm Australian, but in my opinion, the rules are the rules. So, Bairstow should be out. Like I said before, Ben Stokes, though, a courageous effort, 155, to put up that score when they were under the pump as well. England, fantastic effort, almost got England the victory, and the captain did what a captain should do, and that's lead their team through adversity. So fair play to Ben Stokes. Steve Smith, a former Australian captain, was fantastic with his century in that first innings. He was absolutely unbelievable and pivotal in helping Australia claim that second test. Let me know in the comments, though, as we head to Headingley, who's going to win the series? Are England going to come back and make it a 3-2 victory and get the Ashes back, or are Australia going to win in Headingley and essentially and officially retain the Ashes, or are they going to sweep England, or will England get 1 or 2 back? Let me know in the comments your predictions now for the rest of the Ashes as we head to Headingley next week. Now we're going to get stuck into some AFL talk, and it's a round 16 review. We're getting very, very close now to the pointy end of the season, and Dan Houston, wow, after the siren kick against the Bombers to win the game for Port, their 12th straight win now in a row. Wow, what an ending to that game. It was a very good game the whole way. Pretty close, neck and neck. It was almost goal for goal. Port had the slight advantage. They then opened it up to about a 3-goal lead late in that quarter with about 9 minutes to go. And it looked like Port were just going to be able to be too strong, and they were going to win that game and make it 12 in a row and look very, very solid. Essendon, though, weren't going to die wondering without a fight. Fought their way back, got in front late, and then how about that? The hat kick out of the pack from Nick Martin falls into the lap of Dan Houston, and then from 50 metres out, slots it. Beautiful kick, no problems with the distance. The only problem was whether it was touched on the line or not, and by the score review, which is fantastic photo of that, by the way, the score review, it was clearly a goal. So fair play to Dan Houston and the Port Adelaide Power, 12 straight wins now in a row. We also had another draw, Geelong-Sydney on Friday night in Sydney. That was not a good game, I have to say. Sydney did everything in their power to win that game. They were the better team. They should have won, but their goal kicking was atrocious. And we will get stuck into Melbourne soon about their goal kicking as well, so I'm not letting them slide. But Sydney were terrible. They should have won that game, had that game wrapped up, but weren't able to do so. And Geelong, you could easily say, got away with a draw there on Friday night. And the Eagles, they almost pulled off an upset on Sunday evening against the Saints, leading for as much as 4 goals during the second quarter against St Kilda. But credit to the Saints, as good teams should do. They fought their way back and they were able to edge out a close win to the Eagles. Fair play to the Eagles, though. And speaking of them, they're going to kick off the teams who impressed me the most this week. West Coast brilliant effort after that despicable performance against the Swans the week before. They're able to bounce back at home, put in a very competitive effort against a side that is levels above them based off this year, with the standings on the ladder as a great example of that. So well done to the Eagles. I don't believe anyone gave them a chance of winning that game, and the fact they're up by 4 goals during that game at one stage is very good for a team who's had such a tough year, a very, very rough year, and showed a lot of heart out there, which I think a lot of Eagles fans and the rest of the AFL really wanted to see from West Coast. So fair play to the Eagles. They go into although they lost, they go into my most impressed this week. The next team that goes into the most impressed is the GWS Giants, who were absolutely fantastic, edging out a victory in Alice Springs, against Melbourne in what was terrible conditions. Who would have thought it would bloody rain in Northern Territory, Alice Springs specifically? Well played to the Giants. They were dominated from pillar to post by the Demons all day, but they stuck at it. They stayed with them. They were plucky, like they have been all year, and got over the line in the end with a brilliant Josh Kelly goal from 60 metres out late in that quarter after Melbourne tried all that they could possibly do to win the game. The Giants took their opportunity when Melbourne couldn't. So fair play to the Giants. A very impressive win. Another very impressive win. And who would have thought they are still in the race for a top 8 spot? They're very plucky. They can beat anyone on their day, the Giants. Very hard to beat. And fair play, deserve to be in the most impressed this week. And the last team to go into the most impressed this week is the Western Bulldogs. And it's purely because of how they were able to win their game. They were very close with Freo the whole day, and it was almost an elimination final, that game. Could they break off the bye curse, the Doggies? They proved they could, getting a great win over Fremantle, actually smashing them in the end, winning by about 6 goals. So fair play to the Dogs. Fremantle challenged them until that last quarter. They ran away with it, the Bulldogs, and showed that they are going to be a strong top 8 contender. I do believe still that they'll make finals, and potentially, with the run that they've got home, could sneak into the top 4 if the likes of Melbourne slip up and other teams around the Dogs aren't able to capitalise on that last spot in the top 4. So they're one to watch, the Bulldogs. They're in form based off that performance against Freo, and I wouldn't write them off yet for this season, especially after seeing what they did to Fremantle in that last quarter. And with all the players that they've got on their list, the likes of Bontempelli, Liberatore, Treloar, Bailey Smith, Caleb Daniel, Cody Waitman, Jamarra Ugle-Hagan. I could keep going, but I'm just going to stop it there. Tim English, can't forget him, All-Australian ruckman this year. The Dogs are not out of it at all, and they definitely deserve to be in the most impressed this week. Now we're going to get stuck into the teams who disappointed me the most, and we're going to start off with Melbourne, who have been right in the middle of all the media attention in the AFL world this week due to their horrendous goal kicking and their forward structure, which seems to be capitulating as the weeks go by. Doesn't help with Bailey Fritsch now out for up to 7 or 8 weeks with that broken foot. He's probably been their best forward all year, and it really asks the question of the likes of Cozzy Pickett, Ben Brown, although he's 1 week back in, Joel Smith or whoever, Harrison Petty, whoever's going to be that key forward, and then the likes of Neil Bullen, Chandler, Spargo if he comes back in, to really step up now and be pivotal for Melbourne in that forward line. A lot of questions now. Will Petrarca go into that forward line with the potential of Clayton Oliver coming back into the midfield? Who knows? But Melbourne have got a lot of issues up forward that they got to fix. They have to go into the most disappointing based off that performance against the Giants. And for the last month and a half, they have been quite disappointing with their form. Not really a top 4 team at all. However, I do believe, as a Melbourne fan who watches them very closely, I feel as though they are building towards something even bigger than being in form right now. I know it doesn't look like they could win the premiership right now, but there's a reason why the premierships aren't won in July and they're won in August and September. We're not there yet, and I do believe that they're building and slowly moving towards being unstoppable and having a real big tilt at the flag by round 19, round 20. So that'll be one to watch, definitely. That's my optimism kicking in there, and just from what I'm seeing, but for now, they definitely have to go into the most disappointed due to their performance on the weekend. The next team that has to go into the most disappointed this week are the Tigers. Their performance on Thursday night was just inexcusable against the Brisbane Lions, who are, in fairness, running hot at the moment with that performance on Thursday night. I don't think anyone really expected the Tigers to be absolutely smashed. They look like a team who could still contend for the finals, even though they don't have Dimmer as their coach and they've got an interim coach in there. That's just their second loss now since Dimmer left, and it's their biggest loss easily since Dimmer left as well, the Tigers. It just didn't look like they were really ready to play. Dusty was laid out, which probably hurt the Tigers. Jaden Short now has hurt his hamstring and is out for a few weeks. There was no Dion Prestia, who still won't be back this week either. They're still missing Tom Lynch. Does this really rule out finals now with that performance? The young kids probably need to step up. Taranto was well held in that midfield, and with the year Taranto was having, it was very rare to see him be well held and not really have an impact for the Tigers. So very disappointing on the weekend. A big game against Sydney on Thursday night at the G. Really need to bounce back, and a win there will keep their season alive, but a loss to the Swans on Thursday night will probably end it all for the Tigers this year. So with that performance against Brisbane, they have to go in the most disappointed. And the last team into the most disappointed this week has to be the Gold Coast Suns. A massive game against Collingwood, sold out at your home stadium. You're still fighting for finals. You bounce back nicely against Hawthorn. I had the optimism that maybe Gold Coast could turn it around. A competitive performance against Collingwood, whether they win or lose or draw, they could still be in the hunt, but that was not competitive. You're down by like 50 or 60 points midway through the second quarter with only one goal next to your name. Terrible, absolutely terrible, and it feels like it's the same story every year, the last 2 years especially, where the Gold Coast, they look good in the first half of the year, everyone gets excited, potential finals, with such a young team, it looks great, and then they just fiddle and dwiddle away in the back end of the season and fizzle out and are uncompetitive and just become a mid-table team again in 12th or something like that. They're 12th now, and they've just got absolutely destroyed by Collingwood after bouncing back against Hawthorn, but then the week before getting destroyed by Carlton. Shuey Jew, there's reports that his job is almost gone in the next few weeks if things don't turn around. What's going to be playing there? But Gold Coast, they've got a lot of players that need to step up and put in a much better performance than what they have been doing recently. Too inconsistent. They've got a massive game against a team who has won 12 in a row now, and they've got to play them on their home deck in Port Adelaide. The Suns need to bounce back. Very bad performance against Collingwood on Saturday, and have to go in the most disappointed for me this week. Now we're going to look at this week's AFL Round 16 Power Rankings, and as you can see on the graphic here, there are a few changes. The D's, they fall all the way down to 6th now. They are outside the top 4, due to their poor form recently and the bad loss against the Giants. Geelong, they fall down one spot as well, because I truly believe Adelaide are better than the Cats at the moment. They weren't good on Friday night against the Swans and got away with a draw, in my opinion. And the Crows have been in pretty good form recently, and when they're at their best, they are one of the best sides in the comp. I'd put it there. When they're at their best, they're a top 3 side in the competition, so they get into the top 4 for the first time this year. Carlton jump above Gold Coast due to their great win against Hawthorn and Gold Coast's very poor performance against Collingwood. And Freo move below the Giants due to their disappointing loss to the Dogs with how they lost that game especially, and the Giants' fantastic win against Melbourne. And that is your Round 16 AFL Power Rankings. Now we're going to get stuck into the Star of the Week nominations for this week, and we've got to kick it off with the guy who kicked the goal after the siren to get his side's 12th straight win in a row, and that is Dan Houston. He gets a Star of the Week nomination for this week. Like I said, match-winning goal against Essendon, and that's not the main reason why he has got a nomination. He actually played a very good game. He had 32 touches, a goal, that was his only goal, 7 marks, 454 metres gained, 13 intercept possessions and 15 contested possessions, as well as the 5 score involvements. He's having an outstanding season again for Port Adelaide, one of the most underrated players in the comp. You can play him off half-back, wing, he can go in the guts, he can be very damaging all across the field. Is he a smoky for All-Australian wing spot? I know Josh Dacos has had a fantastic year for Collingwood. You could probably put Errol Goulden out there for the Swans. People would put Zach Merritt for the Bombers there. Does Dan Houston deserve a spot in the All-Australian team? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. I reckon he's a smoky, not only for the squad, but also getting into that final 22. But nonetheless, he deserves a Star of the Week nomination this week. The next Star of the Week nomination this week is in the cricket. Steve Smith gets a Star of the Week nomination for his fantastic century against the Poms. Brilliant in the second test at Lords, as I said earlier. 144 runs across both innings, including a century in that first innings. with an average strike rate of 57.30 across the 2 innings. He was absolutely fantastic for Australia, and like I said before, again, pivotal in helping them take a 2-0 lead. Awarded player of the match deservedly. I think a lot of people would have said Ben Stokes was probably a bit stiff with his efforts, courageous efforts in that second innings. But nonetheless, he got player of the match. Will he be player of the series? Let me know in the comments if you think he will be. Does that mean Australia sweep England? Does that mean he needs to get another century to get player of the series? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But he definitely deserves a Star of the Week nomination this week. And the final Star of the Week nomination for this week goes to Machito Owens. He's second now for the season after a fantastic performance against the Eagles, and I believe was very crucial in helping them grind out that win. He kicked 4 goals straight, had 14 disposals, 5 score involvements, and 11 contested possessions. Is he the Rising Star favourite? A lot of people are saying it's between him, Sheezel, and Ashcroft and Jhye Miss. I would probably take Ashcroft out, although Ashcroft is having a very good year for a first-year player. I just don't think he's been just as good as Owens or Harry Sheezel. Jhye Miss, I'd probably put in as a little smoky if he continues this form and gets nearly 40 goals this year. But is he the Rising Star favourite now ahead of Sheezel, or would you still put Sheezel or Ashcroft or Jhye Miss ahead of him? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. But well-deserved second Star of the Week nomination this week for Machito Owens. Now we're going to look at the week ahead in the sporting world. We'll start with the AFL. Round 17 action kicks off Thursday night. Richmond taking on Sydney at the MCG. It's another elimination final, essentially, for both of these sides. The winner will be more likely of making finals than the loser, and the loser will probably be looking at the off-season and where they're going to travel to for their holiday, as their season will almost be done. Bulldogs Collingwood is a massive one on Friday night. There's a few outs for Collingwood, although they do get Jordan De Goey back, and the Dogs, massive win against the Dockers, will look to try and continue that form and try and knock off one of the flag fancies for this year. Brisbane versus West Coast. There's not really much I need to say there. It looks like it's going to be one-sided. It'll be interesting to see what West Coast can do with their efforts. They was very good against the Saints. Can they continue that now away from home against Brisbane? The Giants, they host the Hawks in Sydney, which will be a very intriguing game, in my opinion. Hawthorn will want to bounce back off 2 disappointing performances in the last 2 weeks, and the Giants are coming off a gutsy win against the Demons. Will get to play home to Hawthorn. Speaking of the Demons, they play the Saints at Marvel Stadium. A must-win game for the D's if they want to stay in touch with the top 4. Likewise for the Saints, if they can get a scalp against Melbourne at home, they will be a red-hot chance with the run home they've got in getting a top 4 spot as well. That same night, Port Adelaide looking to get win number 13 in a row against a Gold Coast side who are very inconsistent at the moment and need to respond big after their disappointing performance against Collingwood. We get to the Sunday action. Geelong host North Melbourne as Zach Tuohy becomes the leading record holder for any Irish-born player ever. He officially surpasses Jim Stynes on Sunday. Fantastic stuff from Zach Tuohy, a 2-club player, started at Carlton and then at Geelong. He's a premiership player at Geelong, a fantastic halfback flanker who's been fantastic for the Cats. Congratulations to him. Sunday 3:20, a lot of people could potentially say up there with game of the round. Essendon were narrowly defeated by Port Adelaide at the G after the siren. Now take on a red-hot Adelaide Crows. Which Adelaide Crows are we going to get? They have struggled to travel this year. Adelaide, how are they going to go against the Bombers at Marvel, who are very good at Marvel, mind you, the Bombers. That'll be such an intriguing game to follow. And the Dockers round out the round with an interesting game against the Blues, who seem to be in a bit of form, winning their last 2 games by big margins. Now got to travel to Perth to take on the Dockers, who are coming off a bad loss against the Dogs. Also this week ahead, UFC 293, it's International Fight Week. Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez for the featherweight belt, which will be a banger of a fight. Just before that, Brandon Moreno taking on Pantoja, the second time they fight each other, and also Robbie Whittaker against Dricus du Plessis, the South African, in what looks to be the fight that will set up another title fight against Israel Adesanya at a later point. It's a massive card, I think, for Aussies and New Zealand fans. There's 6 Anzacs fighting on that card. It's going to be massive. A lot of expectation, a lot of questions around certain fighters. Will be very interesting to watch this week. That's on Sunday, Australian time, and obviously American and UK time on Saturday night. And that's all we've got time for on this week's episode of Talking All Sports. Thank you so much for watching. Please, if you feel like it, feel free to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments your opinions on all sports and what you want to talk about next week. Also, let me know if you think Steve Smith will win Test Player of the Series for this Ashes, if Mitch Owens is now the favourite for the Rising Star, or if he'll win it, and if Dan Houston is a smoky for an All-Australian spot this year. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.